Hey everybody, how you doing? Oliver Joyce here on a pretty rainy old Thursday here in Sydney, Australia. It's grey and dark out there, and it's good game development weather. Last night, I got an email from a Sword and Sandals fan called Dominicus Pilatauskas. I'm gonna guess it's a Lithuanian fan. I'm an NBA fan, so there's a basketball player called Zydrunas Ilgauskas from Lithuania, and so I'm guessing maybe you're from there as well. Apologies if not, but Dominicus wrote me a long, quite long email about his thoughts on Swords and Sandals 6, and I was going to reply to him directly via email, but he asked a lot of questions that I thought many of you would like answers to as well, specifically in relation to what is going to be in Swords and Sandals 6, what he liked about the earlier games, and what he doesn't like about those games and what he would like to see changed. So I'm going to go through that email and read it out and paraphrase it a little bit and just give you the answers I have as of today, because as you well know, Swords and Sandals 6 is very much a work in progress. I've been working on it now probably 3 weeks or something like that, but I've been planning in my head for quite some time, and there is a lot up here that I want to actually put into the game. So it's what I'm saying, it's a malleable game. It's something that can change, and depending on fan feedback and so on, to a point. But let's get to the email, because I want to share with you my thoughts and answers for you. All right, so I'm just kind of paraphrasing this email, but firstly, thank you so much, Dominicus, for writing the email. I really, I'm honored that you care so much about the series to take the time to write such an in-depth and thoughtful email. So thank you, my friend. He's recently beat Sword and Sandals 2 and Sword and Sandals 5, and he's also replaying some of the classics at the moment. And he played through the originals when he was a kid, like so many of you did. He says, there are some things I'd like to see in Sword and Sandals 6, because as a fan, I believe my feedback matters. Absolutely it does. Without the fans, this series is nothing, and there's been a lot of fan comments over the years that have just allowed me to tweak the games and just, made the little differences that I wouldn't have thought of. And there's so much stuff that you may or may not know, but I've been sort of collecting over the years just in my head, just on what I can do to make Sword and Sandals better. And I'm really going to try and put it all, or as much of it as I can, into Sword and Sandals 6. All right, so hopefully if Sword and Sandals 6 does well, I'll get myself a coffee machine instead of drinking this instant coffee rubbish. Okay, in terms of visuals, he says, I very much prefer the action icons, animated traders, and various backgrounds from the classic non-Redux versions of SNS 2. They look cleaner and definitely better than what I've seen in the Redux. Oversized and pixelated, and mouse over to display what each action does would be a nice feature, and I missed that in the Redux. Yeah, so the mouse over thing was to do with the games being predominantly designed for mobile at the time, and done for Steam sort of later. And because on mobile, it's just a lot harder to do the tooltips and so on, because you kind of have to press on the button, but you don't have a hover state, if you know what I mean. So the mouse either shows up or it doesn't, that kind of thing. So I'm going to add tooltips, if I can, for a lot of things in Sword and Sandals 6. They may not be mouse over tooltips, but I want to have them at least available at your fingertips. It'll be done in a nice way. As far as the icon style and everything, everything you can see in Sword and Sandals 6 is going to be, almost everything is going to be new art. I'm using not the hand-drawn art I used to do, because I just don't have time to do hand-drawn art anymore. That took me so long, and it's kind of cute and to a point, so charming, but it's so time-consuming for me to do, and the wider audience outside of the core Sword and Sandals fans kind of thinks it's not for them, and so I want to try and capture a bit of a wider market without being too generic. So the icons are going to be a little bit more in line with what you would see in more regular RPGs like Diablo and that kind of thing. That is to say, they'll look cool, but they're not going to be too pixelated though. You'll like the look of them, is what I'm trying to say. The shopkeepers, currently I have a few shopkeepers already done. They're not animated, unfortunately, but they do look really cool. And think of Street Fighter as your guide to this, and not full on anime or anything, but just It's a good look, kind of halfway between Darkest Dungeon and Street Fighter. That's your little hint for that. And if I'm able to, before the end of the game, I'll see if I can do some subtle animations on them, or even add extra animation keyframes if the budget allows. He says, especially I dislike the arena champions in Sword and Sandals 5 Redux. To my disappointment, they were pixelated and oversized copies from Dungeon Monsters. Yeah, I'm disappointed in them too. They weren't great. Those who remember the original Sword and Sandals 5 from 2010, something like that, they were actually animated. They were fully animated, those dungeon bosses, the arena champions. They were bigger versions of the monsters in dungeons, but they were animated nicely. But when I did the mobile Redux versions, they were too hard to make animate because of just the technology. Again, I keep coming down to technology that I hung on to for far too long. To be honest, styling and air, which is the stuff that I made them in, which is sort of graphics accelerated Flash, just didn't allow for that smooth animations that you saw in the old games. For some reason, that was worse, but it worked better on mobiles for some reason. Sword and Sandals 5, the Arena Champion stuff was always a bit of an afterthought. It was added right at the end. The whole game was supposed to be just a dungeon crawler, but then the old company decided you have to have Arena Champions and fights and stuff like that. So I ended up adding them in. They weren't great. Sword and Sandals 6, the enemies will almost all, at this stage, be humanoid, like in Sword and Sandals 2 and 3. So, 2 legs, 2 arms, variations on that. But they'll be fully animated, and they will look like they're full of character and personality. They will look good. You're going to like them. Speaking of characters, I hope the gladiators look more like the ones from Sword and Sandals 2 Classic or Sword and Sandals 3 Clean and Classic. I personally found the look of the characters in Medieval too over the top and childish even. No offense, but seriously, in brackets. You're right. So, again, for those who don't know, Sword and Sandals Medieval was a game that I actually made and released my first game when I left the old company. And it's kind of a game that got me into a lot of trouble, but that's a story for another day. It was originally called You Were a Knight, and it was designed much like Sword and Sandals, but it was going to be its own franchise. It was going to be you are a knight, you are a cowboy, you are a ninja, you are a whatever. But I got into so many problems with the old company with that game that I ended up sort of actually removing it. It had to be removed. But eventually, once I got the rights to Sword and Sandals, I was able to rebrand that and turn it into Sword and Sandals Medieval. That's why it feels like Sword and Sandals, but not quite the same. And there's no sort of brand or lore or anything like that. The characters themselves were designed to be childish. The game was designed for a younger audience, in fact. Hence why there is no gore and, much more cartoony. And the character design is much more childish. I think they're cute. I wouldn't use them again. It's not a style I want for Sword and Sandals. And even to the point where if I ever have the time and the inclination, I'll probably go back and do an update to Sword and Sandals Medieval that has my style of artwork for the characters. I think that would be cool because that would bring it in line a little bit. But, that may never happen. Sword and Sandals 6, however, the characters will, I'm going to say, their closest resemble Sword and Sandals 3. They are the default one, and there's going to be variations on this because, you have different races and so on. But they're big, stocky, think He-Man. They're beasts, big, muscly guys. And they still look kind of cartoony, but not South Park cartoony like Sword and Sandals 2. So closest to resemble Sword and Sandals 3. But Bokimi, my artist from Russia, he's awesome. Alexander Terentev. He is phenomenal, and he does such a good job of the art that you're going to love it, I think. It feels like Sword and Sandals, but it feels more a little bit grittier. And I want to show you. I really do, but trust me, I think you're going to like them. And there's going to be tons of variation and customization and lots of new armor sets and all the rest. So you're going to like it. In Sword and Sandals 3, he says, I very much liked the character creation system where I could choose a character's race and sub-race, gave the gameplay a lot of flavor. It had the best and most satisfying gore with screen splatters and so on. I hope it can be toggled on and off in future release. Absolutely. Firstly, character creation, which is, I'm going to say, about 80% done now. I've been working. This is a feature. So you can choose a race, human, Cycladian, Eldor Hathian, Yeti, Automaton. And then you have Homelands, which is basically like your sub-race kind of thing. So humans can be from Brandor or Braxis. I mean, not Brandor. They're all from Brandor, really. Actually, not all of them. Not all of them. You can be from Fator, Braxis, Takash Desert, whatever. And they'll have default skin types and colors and so on. And bonuses. So from the Takash Desert, you might be... Takash Desert, you may have extra bonus for fighting in the daytime because they're used to the heat. So that will all be in there. The gore will be back. You're going to see limbs severed and blood splatters everywhere, blood on the screen shakes, all that gore. I will most likely have this as an option to turn on or off, because if I ever get this done as a Switch port, Nintendo Switch, we'll see farther down the road, they'll probably go not too much blood and gore, and so we'll probably have an option to turn that off. And, if younger kids want to play too. But it's going to be in there. I want this to be silly and fun, but also dark and edgy and, So, speaking of the city map and traders, I think Sword and Sandals 3 did the best job, hands down. Yeah, that was pretty cool. There was a good variety of those. There's not going to be as many traders in this game, but there will be a good number of them. And you'll have a lot more options in terms of what you can do at shops. And I'm planning on even having little sort of conversations with shopkeepers as well, just depending on where you are in the game. The shop actually travels with you now. So it's a battle caravan of tents that goes with you from town to town. The map in this game will be the full map of Brandor. Think of the map you saw in Sword and Sandals Crusader Redux, for those who like that. I'm going to do a bigger version of that map with more details on it, and you can move around the map and go to different arenas and fight different tournaments in that. So that will be cool. I think that will open up the world once again. In terms of gameplay, all right. Character creation in Sword and Sandals 5 was good also. I really liked the character could be pre-made by filling out the story, and each character race gave certain bonuses. Sadly, what I disliked was it's not possible to reset allocated points to tailor it more to my liking. I'll try and work on something like that. I feel like that can be done. Certainly in the character creation, you can put your points in and then press reset. I will probably put that into the wider game, but there'll probably be like a penalty. So you have to pay a substantial price. And every time you want to reset your character stats and things like that, it might, go up and up. I saw in a game called Titan Quest, they had that, and maybe even Diablo 2. I can't remember if they still do that. I get a little confused a bit. But in those games, you certainly could reset your stats for a price. Where were we? There's no story anymore as far as like your backstory where you answer questions, because it's too much text and most people skipped it. But there will be a lot more story in the game in general. But there will be certainly character race bonuses and bonuses for homelands and bonuses for class and stuff like that. One thing I can reveal, and this is at this stage, it might change, but primary statistics like strength, agility, vitality, stamina, charisma. What's the last one? Forgotten. There's no attack and defense stats anymore. They're gone. I'm replacing that with something more interesting. When you level up your stats, you press strength, it's going to cost you more and more each time. So you get this thing called power orbs. And you start off with 1,000 of them, and you earn them in fights and so on. And you press 1 strength, it costs you 100 power orbs. You press 2 strength, it might be 110, 120. This way, you can't just min-max a character and just go, only strength. Well, you can, but it just gets harder and harder. Just like in real life, diminishing returns of training. So you can train, and your initial results will be, oh yeah, I'm getting quite strong. But to get those maximum gains... what am I talking about? I have no idea what I'm talking about. Look at my arms. I'm not super strong. But, the returns are diminishing. And that is going to be a strategic thing. And I got that from Dark Souls. And it's something I really liked in Dark Souls. Meaning you can still pour points into one thing, but it's not so easy. And it also means that you don't get these ridiculous strength scores, which are kind of meaningless, like strength 230. What does that even mean? You know what I mean? So the Blue Orb Ultimate Attack should return from Sword and Sandals 2 Classic. It's challenging and fun to use. The Psych Up attack. Yeah. That will be back. There will be something there like that. Okay, he says, also, The spellbook system in Redux I found very frustrating, as I could only get one spell per every few level ups. I believe buying spells from the Magic Shop and allocating to slots in spellbooks with different tiers and mechanics makes much more sense. But of course, Redux spells like Pestilence, Essence Shield, and Imprisonment are very useful. Spell systems will all be redone. Be closer probably to Swords and Sandals 3 in that you allocate them to a skill point on your a skill box on your battle bar, and it'll be more like World of Warcraft in that they're skills that you add to the bar, and you learn them via talent trees, but you can also buy them in shops. And that. To be honest, I haven't worked out that, but that's a good point. He misses the spell elements like Necro, Frost, Fire, Acid that makes Swords and Sandals 3 and 4 spell combat more fun and engaging. Me too. I like that, and I think that's going to have a big impact on this game. So certain characters are, more powerful with Frost spells, but Frost actually freezes characters and they can't move for 2 turns or whatever, that kind of thing. I'll bring that all back for sure. Stay hydrated. All right. What Swords and Sandals 5 Redux did great was a mechanic where choosing to spare or not your opponent's life would make an actual difference to the momentary outcome. I think Swords and Sandals 3 had that as well, where it you become more and good or more evil and so on. I'll probably put that back in. We'll see. There's a lot of things in Swords and Sandals 3 I like. The game so far is probably closest to Swords and Sandals 3 in terms of what I'm thinking, but everything's going to be overhauled. You won't believe it. There is some really interesting combat mechanics I'm planning that, just get rid of a lot of the redundancies of the earlier games. And as you're saying, he's onto the combat mechanics. Immunity and resistance to spells are frustrating. It felt there's no point to make magic builds in Redux because all the enemies are resistant to the spells anyway. Yeah, this is a problem. That was definitely an issue. That'll be all rethought and rejigged. There will be viable builds for bards, wizards, fighters, quick fighters, strong fighters. Everything is going to be viable, and it has to be because I want this to be a multiplayer game. So I don't want it just to be everyone's using fighters because they're the only viable class. Speaking of essence, I think the game should return to magic, which is only used for spells, because when basic attacks drain over 100 essence, you fall asleep with an enemy. Yeah, okay. Yeah, I'm going to work something out with this. So stamina and magic are, essence, maybe 2 different things once again, because stamina plays a very important part in this game now, because it now will dictate how many moves you can do in a turn. And this is a system that may not make the final build, but I'm planning on quick characters being able to have multiple moves in a turn. So you might be able to go step forward, attack up like this, raise shield, if you're quick. A strong but slow fighter with not much stamina might only be able to do a strong power attack, and then his turn is done. We're going to work that out. But I think, yes, it probably should be different from the... we'll figure it out. But yeah, I know what you mean. That was a problem. The falling asleep in battle is funny, but it happened way too often in the games. Day and night mechanics with choices to sleep in the street or the tavern were great. Sad not having it in Swords and Sandals 3. It probably won't return in Swords and Sandals 6 in its current iteration, because you travel around in a battle caravan. But what will probably replace that will be sort of like little, mini adventures along the way, like little pop-up. This happened, like you see in Crusader Redux. And I also want day and night time to impact the kind of fights you have, as well as weather. So you might have fighters who are better in wet weather, fighters who are better at night. Undead will get bonuses at night, that kind of thing, because you can choose the undead, just like Swords and Sandals 3. The idea of a gladiator keep was an awesome addition to Swords and Sandals 5 Redux. Having your own personal corner is something truly amazing. If it comes into future releases, the mechanic should be expanded by having each piece of furniture having a bonus. You're onto a good thing, Dominicus. You're full of great ideas here. This is awesome. Yes, that will most likely be in the game. Whether it's in the multiplayer version or the single-player version, I'm not sure. And that gets me onto this point. There's going to be one package. You buy Swords and Sandals 6, you get the whole thing. You get single-player and multiplayer, but there'll be 2 different things. So you make a character. It's either a single-player character or a multiplayer character. And the reason is it's just too hard to balance both. I want multiplayer characters to fight multiplayer characters. You level up in a single player campaign. That's your story. You make another character for multiplayer. Actually, this is the same as multiplayer and solo Ultratus back in the day. So where the Gladiator Keep comes in is this will probably be part of multiplayer Ultratus because it doesn't really fit in with the story of Sword and Sandals 6 having a fixed base. You travel around a battle caravan all around Brandor, fighting in different tournaments to a greater, cause. And there's no point having a keep. But the camp itself will, to a point, be upgradable. But yeah, the Gladiator Keep, I think, would be a great thing to have in the multiplayer version. So, what I mixed in Sword and Sandals 3 and 5 Redux was the Invention mechanic. It was always fun to choose a choice and get a different outcome for each. And it was great in Sword and Sandals 2 Classic that it wasn't just charisma that gave a success chance burner, but rather stat depending on the adventure type. Sword and Sandals 2 Classic did it right, but the Redux adventures were basically generic and not engaging. Oh, that's a shame. I quite like the Sword and Sandals 2 adventures. I can't remember actually now. But yeah, there's something I look at with the adventures. One of the problems is not everybody speaks English of the players, and so if I have too much text in the game, it can be a bit alienating for some players. And I also want to have this game translated to a few different languages. So if I have walls and walls and walls of text, it's going to get quite expensive. And already I'm working out a translation system for the game. I've already got sort of hundreds of lines in there, and that's just for things like just the character creation and stuff like that. But we'll figure something out. I still want to have adventures in the game to a certain point, but they should probably reflect a strength-based adventure or a agility-based adventure. And if it's a decision you make to climb up something, it should affect your strength. I know what you mean. Okay, he says, speaking of which, the leveling system needs to be improved by giving players more leveling points after each level up. That should be solved by what I'm saying is the Dark Souls level up system with the power orbs and so on, and how that ties into how many orbs you get and whether you get them in and out, and you may be able to just use these orbs at any time. I'm going to figure it out. Other than that, the talent and skill system was a beast. A beast was the absolute best, hands down, in Sword and Sandals 3. Tree-like progression with the ability to spend up to 10 points per talent. Yeah, that will probably return. What Sword and Sandals 3 did better than Sword and Sandals 2 was a variety of different gear you could purchase in shops, and I hope we'll see even more variety and even legendary gear, which you can't buy in future releases. Which you can't buy, yeah. And the arena progression where you could challenge an arena champion anytime in the battle pits, and you could choose from 5 different gladiators. Yeah. So, firstly, gear. There will be a mixture. There will be all the base gear, and currently I'm having it commissioned by and Bokimi is doing this awesome artwork. We've got 3 armor sets so far. They are the ones from Sword and Sandals 2 so far that the noob armor and the brigand armor and everything done in a nice fashion. What I'm going to try and do is get all that armor in the game and all the armor from Sword and Sandals 3 and some other armor, but make it so it's not linear. I don't want it to just be like brigand armor is better than noob armor and then cut purse armor is better than whatever it is, because that gets quite boring. I want armor to have weight and resistances and so on. So you might find that the lightness of brigand armor is really useful for quick fighters, and you don't want to get that heavy chainmail armor because you're just too slow and it saps all your stamina. And chainmail armor might have great protection but be extra susceptible to lightning damage. You see where I'm going here? That's my plan, because I think it's a shame that it's always just sort of, in earlier Sword and Sandals, it's like replace armor, and never keep the old one. Sword and Sandals 3 to a point alleviated that with the idea of the the plus and minus bonuses to things, the Diablo style thing. I will probably put that in, maybe not to such a crazy extent as that game had, but we'll see, because I do want to have magical and also enchantments. I want you to be able to enchant your armor and have it change color and that kind of thing. It's a lot I want in this game, and I feel like it's probably unlikely I'll be able to get everything I'm talking about into the final build, but I'm hopeful. And at least because this game is going to be early access, we'll get a lot of it in, and then we can always add more as the game sells and I get more money to add features into the game. He liked how you could challenge an inner champion at any time in the battle pits, and you choose from 5 different fights. I like that too, and I think I'll probably go back to that rather than next fight, arena champion. You should be able to select from a bunch of fighters, but harder, easier, and that kind of thing. And then challenger champion at any time is also cool. There's going to be different towns in this game, and each one with a variety of champions. There's going to be more arena champions than you've ever seen before. Okay, musical weapons. Amazing addition to the game. Hands down, one of my favorite features of Sword and Sandals 3. A suitable weapon for bard builds. Absolutely, capital letters. I can't stress that enough. Hope to see that in those in the upcoming games. They're back, baby. They're back. Bards will be back. Musical weapons will be back. Electric guitars, all that kind of stuff. And there will be viable builds. They're going to be quite cool. And they'll, have sort of advantages against certain characters, and then sort of undead may be immune because they don't have ears, that kind of thing. So it's going to be really fun. He says, let's speak about the dungeons in Sword and Sandals 5 Redux. An interesting mechanic, quite fun to play in, but lacks something. They're not in a good state to be released just yet. The dungeons should be more like Spartacus. Interesting. Yeah, I'm going to say pretty much now, no dungeons in Sword and Sandals 6. Purely an arena game. If I try to spread myself too thinly by adding too many systems, you may end up with sort of just lesser quality like that. And I love a lot of what I saw in the Sword and Sandals 5 dungeons. Yeah, there's a lot of bugs too. That game was a troubled development, both in the original and Redux. Hard. I wish I now know so much more about building roguelikes that I would love to do a roguelike just for itself. But I think there'll be no dungeon crawling in this one. We'll just rule it out for now. What Sword and Sandals 5 did right was the quest and the story. These were interesting and engaging, but I don't know if the quest system is necessary for overall front of the game. That was a fun thing, and it was a kind of the most RPG of all the games. That won't be returning for this game. This will be much more action-focused. Because I really want to get back to what made Sword and Sandals 2 and 3 great, and that's just arena-based fighting. Not so much of the craziness. There will still be a story to follow, though, and hopefully you'll like this story. All in all, you probably guessed I would love to see Sword and Sandals 6 return to its classic roots graphically, as he said. Just reiterating that they will look more like Sword and Sandals 3. That will be the game they look the most like. But these are badass characters. You're gonna like them. Again, think of He-Man. That's the most I can kind of give away at this stage, because I'm not revealing any of the graphics and that kind of thing for quite some time. I want you to be surprised. He says, finally, these are my personal opinions and remarks about the games. Hope you consider them for future games. I realize game development isn't easy and you can't do everything just because of one fan's desires, but I really hope I'm not the only one with these opinions. And I apologize if my remarks are too mean or harsh, but I love Sword and Sandals and want to see the series getting better every step going down. Again, no offense, but it did with Redux series. Okay, firstly, never apologize. I appreciate this feedback. This is stuff I need to hear, and every game developer needs to hear this stuff. We can get very attached to our own games. When you work on something for a long period of time, you get really possessive of it, and you can often get a little prickly around feedback. And certainly when you release a game, the first comments you see on Steam that are negative, you go, "How dare you? You're wrong. No, I won't listen. No," that kind of thing. That'll be a screenshot, I bet. But over time, you start realizing, look, these guys are probably right. These fans probably have a valid point. And there have been a lot of lessons that I've been able to take from the Redux series. I personally feel like I did a lot of things right, but also a lot of things wrong. I could go back and change them and tweak them forever, but they're never going to be perfect games. And I often will see bug reports on them and suggestions and so on. I think the best thing for the series is for me to just get on with Sword and Sandals 6 and make it the best game it can be. And almost this is the next generation of Sword and Sandals games, and we can start from here and, accept the old games for their flaws and their virtues and so on. But your comments are great. I really do appreciate them. And they're all going in my notebook. And not just yours, everybody who's written comments on YouTube and the Discord channel. There's been some awesome comments in the suggestions. One particular guy, I can't remember his name, General someone or other. He is a machine. He's awesome. Some of the things he's written about just have blown me away. And I'd love to do another video like this, just going through his suggestions, just to, for everybody to get some ideas on. But we will do that at some other point because this video is getting kind of long at this point. So where were we? We'll wrap things up. I know the letter's very long. I hope you read it and consider what I wrote. He said, I urge you to make a survey for fans and so on. There'll be no official survey, but there is a suggestion forum in the Discord where I collect all that and I kind of gather it all. And I think I'm not a huge fan entirely of design by committee because ultimately the game designer has to have his own vision for the game, and it can be easily skewed. And you remember what happened with the Star Wars sequels. Disney listened so much to the fans that it was so diluted that nobody was happy in the end, so but you have given me a lot to think about, and I really appreciate it. He finally, Dominicus says, thanks for your time. I wish you inspiration and luck in development. Sincerely, with much love, Dominicus. Thank you, my friend, and you made my night. I read this a few times and thought about it overnight and thought a video was the best way to respond. I hope everyone's kind of enjoyed this video and it's given you a bit of an insight into what's happening next with Sword and Sandals. There are some cool game mechanics, which I've told a couple of people, but I'm going to tell you in a future video that I think you're going to love. There's so much that's going to happen in Sword and Sandals 6. I know I'm promising this is turning into some kind of Half-Life 3 sort of like ridiculousness, but yeah, trust me when I say this will be the Sword and Sandals I always dreamt of making, and hopefully you always dreamt of playing. All right, I'm going to get back into development because it's 10 o'clock now, and I've got a rainy day is great for game development, as I said, and I've got some inspiration. So for more on Sword and Sandals, please remember to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Subscribe. Where's that button? Oh, there it is. It's hidden. Ultimate Professional. Let's try that again. Subscribe. Press the little bell thing. That way you get to access to the videos. Or don't. It doesn't matter. Look, we're never going to be Charlie Penguins or PewDiePie or this kind of thing. Although Charlie Penguins has, in theory, I've talked to him late last year, he's going to be part of Sword and Sandals 6. Hopefully. He's a great guy, and I love his videos, and he will make an amazing arena champion. We'll see. All right, on that note, I will bid you all a fond farewell and have a wonderful weekend, and all the best. Bye for now.